Ghastly Gospels is in association with Blurred.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Ghastly Gospels here on such a wonderful, creepy night. Um, so I am Dr. Kaori Knight. You can always find me on YouTube at the doctor's office. We also have
Captain Diesel. And you can also find me on YouTube at Captain Diesel's Dojo and anywhere other else on oh my god. And any other platform at Cap Diesel 24.
any other else.
Yeah, I swear I know English.
So on our last episode of Ghastly Gospels, we talked about um Elizabeth Battery or Elizabeth
Hmm.
Battery. Um, I still love her.
She's dope. I,
I
I
really
I
do.
love I love the concept of her. I love the fact that the townspeople were like, "Yeah, this big lady on the hill murdering everybody. Let's probably do something about that."
Um, and just as many people as she's killed, allegedly.
Allegedly.
I think that's just really allegedly. I think that's just really interesting. When it comes to her, because women were always looked at so closely at that time. So for her to have gotten away with so much, even with her being a noble person, which is where you're extra looked at, it's crazy.
I think most of it had to do with, like you said, the money and then also the person she was connected to. Like because her husband was the, I guess, overlord, for lack of a better term, of the town. I feel like people kind of gave her grace because, they were married.
But then it was like after he died, and it was just her. I feel like that's where you're looked at the most, and then you just doing shit with loyal followers to do shit with you.
I mean, when you got money, plus I think on top of it, she was responsible for like healing the young woman in town too. So like, which
Mhm.
to your point, I think that should serve as to like maybe why they would like look closer. Because if I send my daughter to you to get help and she doesn't ever come back, something weird's going on.
Yeah, I have, like, several questions.
Like,
Several questions.
where is my child?
Right, like, it's like, she came to you today, like, or she came to you yesterday, it's today, and she's still not here. So, I loved learning or reading about her, but there is something that I love learning and reading about more than serial killers. It's haunted places, mainly
Mm,
for the fact that, like, every time you bring up a haunted place, there's always somebody there that's like, "It's not real."
yeah,
How do you feel
I
about that?
haunted places to me are one of those things I don't play around with. As a horror fan, I'm cool with watching them in movies, but whenever I get anywhere near somewhere that somebody has said is haunted or was haunted, I want nothing to do with it. Like I swear when I buy a house at some point in the hopefully the near future, the first thing I'm doing is I'm bringing a baby with me and a dog with me to make sure they're not like acting weird in the house because if they acting weird, we ain't buying this damn house.
I think you and I are opposite. I wouldn't buy a house that was haunted, but I would for sure, like, want to go to one
Well, that's because you're a
just to go.
psychopath and you like playing around with ghosts and spirits.
Whatever. No, okay, so, I feel like it's down in Atlanta, the one that has, like, that haunted house that's like a hospital. Not a hospital, but it's like a big ass haunted house, and there are several floors that you have to sign a waiver for.
Yeah, that's just the nah, I almost call it a damn escape room. It's a haunted house, yeah, but it's not like I don't think the property itself is actually haunted. I think it's just a haunted house.
Right, but I mean, I enjoy things like that. I haven't gotten to go one because the last 2 floors are snakes and spiders. I would not make it.
Oh no, you
But
you you bad. You do you, man. You bad. You bad. You got it.
I listen, I would not make it. As soon as a spider touches me or I see it, if I see a snake, I might actually just like throw up. But um things like that, like haunted houses, like when you go to like a haunted house for like Halloween, I'm cool with those. But there are like those actual haunted places with all of these stories around them that you're just like, I don't think I want to do that, but then I'm just like, I kind of wanna do that.
Yeah, once you tell me somebody's died in a house, I want nothing to do with it. Leave it alone. I'm never coming back there.
I would not move into one for sure. But that brings us to one of the most famous houses, the Amityville. You know, I was miss saying this name because I kept adding an N, and I'm not really sure why.
Like, were you just saying "Eminem"? Like, where's the N coming
Yes,
in?
and I kept saying it, like, I kept adding an N. I was like, "Is there an N in this word?" And I looked it up, and I was like, "There's not." I don't know why I keep adding one. But the Amityville house,
You speak all those
which is the
languages.
place that you shut up, which is the place that you picked, for our haunted locations episode, which is what this episode is. So, let's talk about the Amityville house.
Yes, let's talk about the Amityville house. To your point, I've always been somewhat infatuated with this house from watching the movies growing up, from the one from what, 79, and then the
Mhm,
2005 one as well, was the one I watched for the first time. Found that in
mhm.
my mom's drawer for whatever reason. They were like, which is weird because they don't even like horror movies. So to find that movie in their drawer was like a whole weird thing. But everyone here, for anybody that's not aware of what the Amityville house is, we're going to give you guys a very spooky summary of this house and why you should possibly never want to go there. Um, so this kind of dates back to November 13th, 1974. It's a neighborhood called Amityville, Long Island. Originally, I thought this was in Atlanta, but it's come to find out this is a home in Long Island. And there was a really horrific crime scene that took place there. See, there was a 23-year-old man by the name of Ronald DeFeo Jr. He was a very interesting young man. He and his family lived in a house, and their family owned an auto body shop, apparently, that he never went to for work. Like he worked there, but this man was always at the bar drinking. He was always doing shit he wasn't supposed to be doing. And apparently, all that drinking led him to one day feeling like he needed to take a rifle and kill all six members of his own family as they slept in the home. And I think the
Mm,
address is like 112 Ocean Avenue for people that are wondering. The victims included his parents and his four siblings. Funny enough, later on, Mr. DeFeo then claimed that voices were the things that drove him to murder his own family. And I think even more interestingly, a fun fact about this is that when the bodies were found, all the bodies were found face down in bed. So as they like almost like as if he placed them there face down. And more
mm,
interestingly, nobody woke up. So there's like no signs of any struggle when all the family members were shot. So you'd assume that if a gun goes off in your home, you or anyone else would wake up and try to figure out what was going on, but it seemed like there was no struggling whatsoever. So either he went through on some Splinter Cell hitman type shit and took them all out really quickly, which I highly doubt, or something weird happened there. And even more interesting is that no neighbors recorded hearing any gunfire like going on that night when things were going on. So nobody heard the gunshot in this small neighborhood. None of the bodies seemed to have a struggle. So like it seems like everybody was in their sleep when they were murdered, and he claimed voices drove him to do it. Now, later on, I think there's a report of him saying that some kind of assassin or secret agent like made him kill his family as well. So there's probably more of a cuckoo issue going there with Mr. DeFeo, but it's very interesting. And after the initial murder of the family, a little bit over a year later, the house was cleaned up and sold to the Lutz family at a bargain price, obviously, because somebody got murdered in the house. Multiple people got murdered in the house. But
mhm.
only after 28 days, the family fled the house, saying they were done, claiming that the home was haunted by this dark, malevolent force. And all their chilling experiences that they had within the home was then inspired. Well, it did inspire books and documentaries and the movies that we know of today. So that is the original story of the Amityville house. What are your thoughts?
You know, I always think it's interesting whenever something like this happens. Um, kind of wonder if it's actually the fact that the person heard voices or if they kind of just like undiagnosed mental issues and they just snapped.
Mhm. It's cool either way.
But
I mean, cool being, not the best word here, but
not cool
I
for murder.
right. I would lean more into the mental health aspect if the whole idea of there not being any struggle with the bodies was a thing. Like, I find it very hard to believe that none of the family saw this man shoot somebody or hurt or like once you hear a gunshot go off in the home and you see him with the gun, like there's like if for there to be no kind of a struggle or no kind of fight back, like for them to all just be face down dead, it's kind of odd to me. And the biggest thing is the fact that no neighbors heard that. Like me living in Atlanta, if I hear you could hear a gunshot inside my house like, from, like, miles away, it feels like I would hear a gunshot go off. So the fact that this small neighborhood with no cars, no rustle of the city or anything, like, distracting as being, like, a white noise background, no one heard this gunshot go
Mm.
off is kinda crazy to me.
Well, that also kind of speaks to human nature, like when people don't want to get involved, they didn't see or hear anything. Kind of like and uh this may be an episode later, but that girl and I want to say it was in New York also. I want to say that. I have to actually watch the episode again, but the girl there were 38 witnesses to her being murdered outside of her building and in her building's hallway, but nobody heard or saw anything. Even though y'all are witnesses because all of y'all heard and saw anything or heard and saw things, but y'all didn't hear and see things.
Wait, wait. So, they're witnesses that did not hear or see anything?
Yes, when they were asked if they heard and or saw anything, one person was like, "I mean, I heard her, but I didn't see anything." So I just chopped it up to nothing was really happening. Then it was, "Oh, I saw her go into the alley, but I didn't hear or see her being murdered outside, even though it was like right
Yeah.
outside my window and she's screaming."
I think this it's called there's a specific name in psychology for it, but I think for ease of use here to not sound like a crazy person, I will use the term the bystander effect, I think is the maybe one of the proper names for it.
I think that's what it
Where
is. Yeah.
yeah, people just assume somebody else is gonna do something. Or honestly, I understand it because if I heard screaming or something coming from like a good distance away, I would think that it's somebody having fun. Like my mind wouldn't immediately go to murder, it would go to like somebody's being stupid.
Yeah, so I mean, and it was a lot of things, but that kind of like when people are saying, "Oh, I never heard a gunshot." You probably did, but gunshot may have not been what registered for you at first. And then some people they just don't want like some people just don't want to talk to the police or be involved in situations like that, so they're just, "Oh, I didn't hear anything."
That's insanity.
So
That's crazy.
I always find it hard to believe when someone says like, "Oh, I didn't hear anything," and that shit is loud as hell, and it's like across the street from you or next door to you, and you're telling me you didn't hear that, but on any other given day, you hear them like arguing outside or something like that, but you don't hear the gunshot in the middle of the night. Several gunshots, actually.
Mhm. I think again,
So it's
obviously for the most part, it's probably a fear aspect too that plays a part into that, where it's like I hear the thing
Mhm.
going on, but I'm not going to. It's like oh, it's fight or flight for the most part. I'm not going to risk my life to go help somebody else.
Right. I mean, but even then, you don't have to go anywhere. Call the police.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing because I think the police showed up the next morning. I think in regards to the Amityville murders, and they found him
Mhm.
there. So I'm like, at some point, somebody had to call the police. The next, like if the next morning they pull up, somebody called the police, I believe. So to your point, I think somebody probably heard a gunshot, but they were just lying saying they didn't out of fear or out of fear that they would get
Mhm.
some kind of accomplice tagged on them. I don't know.
Yeah, something. I mean, like when you just really don't want to have anything to do with it, and like when you have just made up in your mind that it's not your business, then you don't hear anything.
Now, my question for you regarding this, like, how long would it take for you to leave a
And that
house that's haunted?
I think it's kind of wild.
You said what again?
Um,
You were cutting out.
I said, how long would it take me? It
Okay.
depends. If it's like if it's like where I like if I wanted to be there to like experience the haunting, I feel like something would actually have to just touch me. Then I'd leave. I don't want to be touched.
Girl, once I hear it, get out.
But
I'm gone. I'm over. It's over with. The house is yours. It's getting sold
like I
that
guess
day.
if I mean, if I didn't know that a house was haunted, and I'm in there, the first time you move a fucking chair or something, I'm gonna be like, "You know what? I think it's time to go." Because
See,
I'm not expecting you to do that, like, I'm not expecting that to happen, I'm not knowing that this place is haunted, so I've, like, cleaned the kitchen, put all the chairs under the table, and then I go, like, turn around to put a cup in the sink and turn back around, and all the chairs are on top of the table, like, I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool, bye." What are we
see,
doing?
the reason I'm gonna call you Cap in this situation, which is this because of a story you told me, which you probably got to tell at some point on the pod. You had a literal haunted doll throwing shit at you in your own house, in your own room, and you just like, yeah, it's
Still
cool.
do.
Nah, bruh.
I
Nah,
didn't
bruh.
say no. I didn't say, "Yeah, it's cool." I was very, very freaked out by that. However, I was not allowed to get rid of her, and still not because she's downstairs in the garage. But I was not allowed to get rid of her because she was a gift from my mother, and my mother didn't believe me. So, I don't know.
But didn't your mother have an issue, like have an experience with the doll too?
And my brother did, not my mom.
Oh yeah, y'all the damn
It was
Warrens in
me
that
and my it was
household.
me and my brother. It was me and my brother. We had the experience with it. I wish I actually found that tablet and it still doesn't come on.
Jesus Christ. Well, if y'all are interested
So
in hearing
I
the full
charged
story,
it. I charged it for over like an hour.
nah, nah, I'm cool on that. If y'all are
Y'all can
interested in
hear
hearing
that
the full
story
story, we'll talk about
anytime.
it. But there is a comic
Okay,
you
so
wanted to
my
transition to,
question
right?
to you,
Oh, go ahead.
hold on. My question to you
Mm,
is, would you visit this house today?
no, I told you I'm not visiting any
Why?
haunted building area. Anything that's been confirmed to have a haunting in it, I am not dealing with. I'm staying very, very far away from
But,
that.
okay,
Plain
so
simple.
let's say because the Warrens actually visited the house, right? And they
Mhm,
were talking about them and another, like, person were talking about, demon spirits versus just, like, mad ghosts. But then there are people who bought the house and they renovated it. They took away the eye windows and everything, and that's when that, was around the time also when they changed the address to the Ocean Avenue or whatever. And so it's
mhm.
like they discourage people, like, they renovated it to discourage people from coming to visit, but it's like, you can't go in because they live there, but would you, like, just be outside?
No, I'm not going to the house. I'm sorry. Um, Funny
Okay,
enough though, I
then
will say this. This may make me sound like a hypocrite. If I'm the people that own that house, I'm probably like converting that into like a place for tours where I'm charging people like money to go visit the house or like Airbnb it out to people that want to be in a haunted house. Now, would I ever in my life go in the house? No, but I'm paying people to go like take care of that shit for me because that's mad money you just throwing away. Trying to not like I feel like people would. I feel like if you left it up for availability, people would like stay. Like they say they Airbnb the Amityville house.
right, yeah. They would get a lot of money for Airbnb, yeah.
No, I would do that shit? No, never in my life. I don't wanna deal with that.
So in terms of, like, the movies, because I know that they had the 2, and then, of course, in The Conjuring, is it the first one or second one where the Warrens visit it or whatever? It's part of the movie. Can't remember if it's the first one or the second one.
The Amityville house, I think
Like, with this
was
Yes.
because the second one is when they went to Britain, correct? To deal with the
Yes.
family with the Cookie Man, and I think they dealt with the
Yes.
Amityville house in the beginning of the movie. Is that when Valak,
I
first
think so,
approached her
yeah.
maybe? Yeah, I think that's what that
I
was.
think so. I think it's the beginning of the second one. So,
Mhm,
like, with the movies, um, and they're, of course, taking like, the one from 1979 was taking information, like, directly from, like, the people who live there, so the Lutzes. But then the
mhm.
2005 one, they're like, "Oh, they embellished a bunch of stuff, and they used our name without our permission." And then we have where the Warrens visited the Amityville house in the beginning of the second one. So, in situations like this, would you prefer having the movie or like a book out for the place versus the story that's actually given from the people? Because sometimes they lie.
Yeah, I think for me, I would prefer honestly, and the ethical value here is probably off a little bit, but I prefer like the movie or the book. I prefer like the spruced up version, the more eccentric version, just because I'm watching it for entertainment. I feel like when regards to
Mhm,
hauntings, the actual reality of them, although they're scary, is a little bit more tame. 'Cause I feel like there's a lot more time in between. It's like a slow build up. Sometimes the actual scary thing is something that people can't really describe for the most part. But when you're
mhm.
looking at it from the aspect of a movie, again, you can use sound design, different things like that to make it feel more grandiose. And as somebody who's just consuming the stuff that wants to, you want to have that little adrenaline rush of being scared and like the whole fantasy of the lore of the home. I think I would prefer those movies, just because they make those things feel a little bit more iconic.
Agreed. Okay, okay.
Now, depending on
Alright.
this, I feel like with serial killers, maybe a different story because the actual story is sometimes a little bit more like frightening than the actual movie itself. But
Definitely,
for
yes.
possessions and spirits, yeah, for sure.
I think, like, with serial killers, I think it depends because I feel like the victims of serial killers, like, the ones who are able to survive,
Mhm.
because there are some serial killers who leave people alive and whatnot. I feel like their experience and the way that they end up telling it is much creepier and crazier than, like, what movies and shows do because, like, with Criminal Minds, they deal with serial killers all the time. Like, there's time in between. And then, they're flashing back between the team and the serial killer, and so, like, you're kinda, like, trying to focus on both, whereas you talking to, like, a survival or survivor where you're getting that whole entire experience all in one.
Right, 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 right. I'm usually not as interested in the process of finding the killer unless there's like some new interesting way that they use to track them down. For the most part, I want to see the methodology of a
Mhm.
of a killer.
Yep. See? It's not just me. I'm not crazy. Anyway,
I mean, you are a little bit, but I think we're all a little crazy.
well, we're all mad here. So speaking of other places, uh, I have an island, right? And it's in Italy and it's called Paveglia
Mhm.
Island. Um, and I actually really enjoyed looking this one up again because it was said to me in a conversation several years ago because we were talking about haunted places and things at work, and my boyfriend's best friend was like, "I feel like you would go to this place." And I was like, "What place?" And he just showed it to me, and then I was, like, obsessed with it for months. I would definitely try to go here. However, with Paveglia Island, so it was at first, it was just like, regular islands. Then it turned into a quarantine when people started getting the plague. And I'm going to say I'm going to go with the Black Plague. 'Cause it's the only plague that I know that would have driven them to a quarantine island. And um, then it was turned into an asylum. And then after that, they used it for some agricultural stuff, and then after that, they just completely shut it down. But you can't just visit this island. It's not somewhere where you can just go. You actually have to write to the Vatican and ask for permission.
I'm assuming you have to have like a good reasoning for wanting to be there, right?
Well, and you also can't go for more than 3 days, because at that point, the people who have gone said that they couldn't go for more than 3 days, although some people were able to stay, like, a 4th day, but most people weren't able to make it past day 2, because at that point, you'll either be driven sick or mad.
Oh wow.
And I said, "That's very interesting," and there was some and you can only have your letter approved by the Vatican if you're doing photography or video or some kind of research that is specifically related to what happened on the island. So
So I'm
when it was
assuming
an
there's like a
asylum
documentary
or
or a
something like
film
that.
based off of this, right?
No, and there should be. The only thing that they really had was it's been on a couple of episodes of like Ghost Hunters or some like a couple of the haunted shows, and then they had Haunted History did a episode on it, and that's where they were able to go onto the island and kinda just, like, look around. But as of, like, staying like, anybody staying the night or doing anything like that, no. And I was like, "You know, if this is something that has to be signed by the Vatican City, like, the Pope has to give you permission to go to this place, you don't think that's odd?"
Can you describe maybe like some of the sickness people were getting when they were going there, staying for like a day or two?
The person that I was following, whose story I was following, that said that they went he only stayed about 2 days. He got fever, he started scratching, kind of like if you were getting, like, the measles or something like that. There's just, like, spots that ended up on him, and then he just felt like he was too sick to move forward, so he asked to be like, he requested to be extracted from the island. And he only made it a day and a half. He was there for most of the first day and then a little bit of the second day. He never made it into the night of day 2
Oh
or
hell
night
no.
2.
Hell no. We're not doing this.
And it's like because there are still some of the buildings, so some of the buildings are still up. So a lot of their quote unquote reasoning for not letting people onto the island is because in the building some of the steps are broken and things like that. And I'm just like, you know, nobody actually gives a damn about steps as long as they're able to move around some part of the bottom floor. So if people
No.
are still able to move like around some part of the bottom floor, they're gonna want to go. And I suspected that they were basically not wanting people to go there because, you know, there could be remnants of, like, the Black Plague because, of course, it was a quarantine,
Mm,
and you can't always clean something 100%, and it could always develop over time into something else.
that is interesting.
Which is where that guy, like, when he just randomly started getting a fever, perfectly healthy, because you know, you have to get, like, shots to travel and things like that, perfectly healthy, and then all of a sudden, he got this, like, high-ass fever, scratching. I said, "You know." Alright, mini Chernobyl over there. Jesus.
Right.
Um, but the only thing that I really could relate to this is when the Vatican City, like, hides things, they hide things really well. So there's a comic book called Vatican City, and in that comic book, vampires are attacking literally everywhere. The United States fell in 9 hours, right? And, um over in Vatican City, like, they kidnapped a doctor in America and his family. Over in Vatican City, they just start fucking killing a bunch of people because they are looking for someone who is under Vatican City. And I said, it's really interesting that the Vatican is the source of all of these things. So with Proveglia Island and then things hidden under Vatican City and, like, the Vatican City archives, and I was just like, "This is really interesting, things related to the Vatican specifically."
Yeah, the
What do you
Vatican, in my
think?
opinion, is kind of like I'm picturing it like the Warren House on steroids, where they have to have like some sacred objects or different haunted things that they just deem like a mark against God that they just like hide down there in
Mhm.
these blessed cases or something of the sort.
So, if this place had to be blessed, which I think that at one point they do send someone to kinda just, like, bless the island. So, like, if this was a place that had to be blessed constantly and you got approved to like, you just went because you want footage, right, for any podcast, and you got approved to go, would you go?
Fuck no. I told you I'm not
Why?
going to
It's
any
good
haunted
research.
location. No, I'm not doing that. We just had the conversation. I'm not going to any haunted place, especially when you just gave me information regarding somebody that went there and got leprosy in a day and a half. Like, no, I'm not. So I'm not doing this. I'm not going to any haunted location that I know is haunted. Now, if you ask me, hey, do you want to go to the Vatican City? Cool. If they happen to have some, crazy shit down there, maybe I'll take a look at it, but probably not, because then at that point it feels like the setup to a horror movie. And I am, ma'am, I am a melanated individual. I'm not walking into a known haunted area. Nah, I'm cool. I'm cool.
Okay, so what did you think about the Vatican City comic book?
The comic book was interesting. I think I agree with you when you talked about how like the art was kind of jarring. It felt like
Mm,
they were trying to go for the Alex Ross like art or painted art
mhm,
style of art for the book, but I think it just felt kind of like unfinished. If it's like it felt like this was like a rough draft of the book in regards to the art, and maybe it's just like
mhm,
my eye and how I see this type of art. So maybe I'm not the audience for it in regards to that, but it was a little jarring. But in regards to the story, I found the story very interesting. Because to your point, the fact that these this group of vampires was able to take down the entire country of the United States within 9 hours and do so in a very like silent way at that because it felt like there's like no resistance damn near like they just secretly planned out this
mhm,
coup and took out all the police officers, all the fire department, any first responder very quickly and took down like
mhm.
major areas like the
The government.
Pentagon, the government in like a
Mm,
quick succession. So much so to the point to where we transitioned into the Vatican City in Rome. Like all the Rome citizens don't know what's going on with America. They just see that there's a blackout and there's no communication, and that's it.
mhm,
So it's like, damn, these
mhm,
vampires are probably the most efficient vampires I have ever seen. And this is me coming out of watching, or not watching, but reading the Blood Hunt stuff that came out last year.
mhm.
So it's pretty good. I think the
Yeah, the
story's
artwork
interesting.
was driving me. Yeah, the artwork was drowning me because I mean, and I could see what was happening, but it was like my eyes were still trying to adjust to what was going on, but I feel like even with the artwork being what it was, it didn't take away from the story because I was still like, "Damn, dang, oh my god!" Like as I'm reading, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay, so I think it's just me and you with art. I don't know," but it being I always find it interesting that, especially like for like with this comic book and this particular island, the minor priests have so much information and they decide to tell you last minute.
Right. Like once it's nighttime, we already sat down in this church all day. It's like now you telling me that these are vampires and why they're coming here?
Yeah, and then you noticed because everybody's like, "Okay, we're on hollow like, we're on holy ground, like, so, like, they can't come." But then you notice those exact same people that were masked are going into a church, and it's like, "How's that?" And you're like, "Oh, those are vampires. Those aren't vampires, those are just regular people." "Sir, what? What are we doing?" And it's just like, "Why do you have so much information and you absolutely refuse to share it until the very last minute?" And I feel like that's how they kind of do with the island as well, is because I did write a letter. Okay. I'm not even gonna lie. When I first discovered
Why?
the island. Shut up. When I first discovered the when it was told to me and I saw that you had to write a letter to the Vatican. I did write one. And like after they tell you no, they give you like a bunch of like random information. And it's like, if you have all of this information, why are you encouraging people to write you a letter to get permission when you know you're not going to give it?
Man, y'all, this was almost Kaori's last episode on the Ghost on Ghastly Gospel because she would have been contracting leprosy and measles at this like Italian or not Italian, but it's Roman island. There's no way, bro. And to your point, to them holding the information, it feels like a damn nigga here. Like you keep begging, here, we'll just give you this information so you're like will satiate your curiosity, I guess maybe.
It's always just like a here damn, like, but not here damn because you're in here with us. You don't want to be killed either. So if you have the information, why are you hoarding it? That is crazy.
Yeah, as far as the comic book goes, I'm really excited to see how they combat these vampires because it damn near feels like these vampires are on like a blade level where they're just like super strong, maybe not super as fast. I don't think they have like any enhanced speed for the most part from what I've seen and with the art so far. But for them to be able to just like throw on some black clothes, pull up in the daytime, and just start cutting people in half just cause I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't see how you fight back with these vampires, especially when they're making the effort to unearth their vampire queen, who we is nameless at the moment.
I wanna know her name.
I feel like it's gonna be
I want
Lilith.
to know her name.
I feel like they're gonna name her Lilith.
I
That's what
feel
I'm guessing.
like it's either going to be Lilith or and I don't know if it's just my super obsession with Resbeth, but if Battery comes out on any page, I'm gonna be like, "Bro, I'm locked in."
Elizabeth just feels like a vampire woman, like a woman vampire name. I feel like.
Honestly, yes. So I'm ready because I think the next issue comes out next month in
Oh wow.
June. I yeah, I don't they're not really in a hurry for the story, which is both fine and annoying because it's one less thing that I have to worry about trying to gather or pay for
Hmm.
up until, next month, but it's also I need to know what her name is. I need to know about these vampires, I need y'all to hurry up.
I'm glad there's a time gap
Begging.
because Marvel and DC are dry, milking my pockets dry right now with them dropping stuff like every week. It feels like.
Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, Mad Cave. I'm like, "I need y'all to fucking relax."
Like I got 15 writers writing 15 different stories that are all seemingly entertaining right now. I need you to relax and just
Oh
pace
my
yourself.
god. I literally put, 30 books into my drive to do this weekend. I'm like, "Please." And I'm not sure what is going on, however, because there are so many serial killer comic books and vampire comic books coming out right now, and I'm just like, "Are we all okay as a society?" I'm gonna say no.
Oh, do you see the
I gotta
economy
say
right
no
now?
because what's going on? I'm like, oh, because there's one that came out, The Slasher's Apprentice.
Mhm.
He had me Googling things for hours because I'm sitting here like, was there a serial killer who wore a lion's mask and just murdered several people? There's not. But this girl wants to be the apprentice to a serial killer and goes so far as to set up a group of people to be serial killed by this man so that she could ask him to be his princess.
Yeah, I gotta read this as
Said,
soon
well,
as we
I'll
get
be
off the
damned.
pod. This seems interesting. I'm reading this as soon as we get off the pod. I'm not
Said,
gonna
well,
lie.
I said, well, I'll be damned. All right, all right. It was good. It was a good one.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. That sounds cool. And to your point, I don't know. I feel like all the horror that's being put out right now is, to your point, just like a maybe it's a conduit of like getting out whatever negativity you feel like is going on in the world right now. With we know where the current state of America is with our current orange man in office and the tariffs and
Mhm.
whatnot and different things like that going on. Um
Yeah.
with all that going on, and then also like in the film industry with like the release of Sinners being something that's come out recently. It just feels like art is really being used right now in a time to just express the difficulty that's going on right now in the world, which is, I think is a great way to
Yeah.
get it out as a conduit, honestly, because then we get amazing things like Sinners or
Honestly, yeah.
these comic books.
Yeah, between Sinners, these comic books, and then the horror movies that are coming out back to back. I said this has to be horror year. Has to be.
Honestly, I talked about this on Facebook to with like speaking to a couple people. This has been like a horror like past couple years thing where I felt like horror has maybe not getting all the recognition because you already know how people do get down when it comes to horror. They're too scary, so they don't really consider it for a lot of
Mhm.
major awards for the most part. But when I'm looking at the best movies that's come out the last 2 to 3 years, and I'm somebody that watches all different types of genres from horror to rom coms to comedies to action stuff. Like the best things that I remember seeing from the past few years have been horror movies. Right, that's stuff like Talk
Yep.
to Me, Sinners, Alien and Romulus, most recently with the Woman in the Yard. I know there's probably
Mhm.
a million I'm forgetting because I've either reviewed them on the YouTube channel or I've just, made a post about them. But horror has just been at its peak, and they've all been these original stories. I mean, outside of Alien and Romulus obviously being like a franchise movie, but for the most part, all these stories have been original stories that have just been telling amazing tales.
Right. And I enjoy the fact that not a lot of them are slashers either, but then again, I do want some slashers, so I'm like, Happy Scream is coming out, I Know What You Did Last Summer is about to come out,
Mhm.
and, like, um, I do want some more slashers, but I'm perfectly fine without having a crap ton of slashers coming out back to back either because, um you just get all of these really, really fun stories. So I know like a lot of people they do the original stories. I would like to see some more haunted places. Something like Proveglia, I think would be really, really fun as a story, like as a movie. I feel like that would be an interesting visual.
I can see it, like, being in a filmed in a similar fashion to, like, the Chernobyl Diaries maybe or, like, some kind of
Mhm.
found footage film I think would be great there.
Yes, absolutely yes. That's it for me. Did you have anything else?
Nah, man, y'all stay your asses at home. Leave these haunted places alone, man. Let's admire them from afar through the media lenses of film and art, but let's not end up haunted or contracting leprosy trying to go be nosy at an island.
I'll visit them for you guys and just tell you
Shit.
about it.
Don't come back around me with that shit. You as soon as you do that, you will never step foot in the home that I own again.
Oh, God. You
We're
know,
gonna
you
be
could
long
just
distance
get, like,
friends
a
forever.
cleansing.
It
We
ain't
could
strong
just,
enough.
like, do a cleansing. We
We
could
gotta
just do a cleansing and the
throw
next
the whole
one.
Kaori away. We need a new Kaori. I can't do it.
Whatever. I'll clone myself, send my clone, and just, like, go visit places. Kinda like, you know, how
Mhm.
Naruto shadow clones work, where you can just send one and come back with the information. We'll do that.
We'll try that. Maybe that'll work.
But that is it for this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week for another one.
Y'all be safe. And remember, stay ghastly. I don't know. I'll come up with a catchphrase. It was going somewhere. I promise. So to say stay
What's
gospel, but that didn't sound right. Stay ghastly, stay
gonna
holy.
say? Are you gonna say?
Maybe I don't know.
Maybe yeah. Ghastly Gospels. Stay ghastly, stay hopeful. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
All right, y'all. Peace.